Hi and welcome to Politics 101. In this first episode we're going to talk a little bit about how you become Prime Minister in Britain. So to start us off, I want you to take a moment and just have a think about that question. How do you become Prime Minister? Just imagine you were setting about the process. Let's imagine you're quite young, because you're probably going to have to be. It's quite a long journey that you've got ahead of you. What steps are you going to have to take to become Prime Minister? Well, there's quite a lot that we could have said in response to this question. So you might, for example, have thought about the quite narrow social background that our politicians tend to come from, and particularly our prime ministers. Very many of our prime ministers went to Oxford and Cambridge. Very many of them went to prestigious public schools, places like Harrow and Eton, for example. But leaving that to one side, if you want to become involved in politics in Britain, at least involved in mainstream politics, the first thing you're going to want to do is join an established political party. And because we have what's called a two-party system in the UK, which is caused by our electoral system, first past the post, if you want to be Prime Minister, realistically, you're probably going to have to join either the Labour Party or the Conservative Party, because those are the only two parties that have produced Prime Ministers in, what would it be now? Around about, over 100 years, actually. So you're going to want to join Labour or the Conservatives, and in order to do that, you're going to have to make some kind of ideological choice about where your politics lie. So that's the first step. The next thing you're going to want to do is to get involved in local politics and national politics. And that means getting involved in local campaigns. It means knocking on doors, delivering leaflets for your local MP, perhaps standing for the local council. You're going to want to make a name for yourself in the local party, and if you can, in the national party. Because what you're going to want to try and do is get selected as the prospective parliamentary candidate for the general election. Now, there are only 650 constituencies in the UK, and in order to be selected, you need to be able to apply for a vacant seat. So there's quite a lot of luck involved in this process. Or if you're lucky, there might be things in your favour, right? So if your father was an MP, or if you've got good connections within the party, that's all going to help you, isn't it? Right? We've always got to be a little bit cynical here about where our politicians come from. It's not surprising, for example, that Stephen Kinnock, the son of former Labour leader Neil Kinnock, is a Member of Parliament, and I'm not, right? So we do need a bit of cynicism here. So you join your party, you get involved. Let's say you get selected as a prospective parliamentary candidate. You're then going to need to get elected. So you're going to need to campaign at the general election. And here it's going to matter what seat you are contesting. Many seats in the UK are what we would call safe seats, and in these seats there's very little prospect of the seat changing hand at a general election. So if you manage to get selected for a safe seat, you're probably going to become the Member of Parliament, and if you don't, if you're in a marginal seat, well, you might have to battle for it to try and win it off the other party, and if you're in a seat that is unwinnable for your party, well, at least it's experience, and maybe you can go on to fight another seat. So let's say you get elected, you become a Member of Parliament. You're then going to be quite junior within the House of Commons. So you're going to want to make a name for yourself, but you're also going to want to be loyal. So the way British politics works is you become a member of the parliamentary party when you're elected as a Member of Parliament, and you're elected off the back of an election manifesto that will contain a range of commitments from, really it comes from the party leader. And in order to make progress with your career, you're going to have to demonstrate to the party leader and to the leadership structure within Parliament that you are loyal. And the way that you're going to do that is by voting in favour of motions put forward by your party. If your party are in government, for example, they will seek to pass law, and they'll also seek to win votes in the House of Commons. And what they will do is they will ask the people who are responsible for party discipline in Parliament, they're called party whips, to instruct members of Parliament to vote a certain way on particular pieces of legislation. And if it's particularly important legislation, they will implement what's called a three-line whip. And what that means is that there's something called the Order Paper in the House of Commons. This is a list of what's going on in the House of Commons on that particular day. And what the whips will do is they will literally underline it 3 times. And what that means is that if you're a member of Parliament for the party in question, you must vote with the government or with your party on that particular motion. So you need to demonstrate loyalty. Now, obviously, that has some quite negative consequences for democracy in the UK, because what it often means is that a member of Parliament, in order to progress with their own careers, they may have to ignore their own moral values, and they may even have to ignore what their constituents are saying, because it might be that they need, in order to progress with their parliamentary career, with their political career, it might be that they've got to be loyal to their party rather than to their constituents. And that's going to mean that the kinds of people that rise up through the party system are going to be those that are the most ambitious, and not necessarily those that are representing their constituents the best. So the next step in the process is going to be to get some kind of job within the government. That might be as a minister or a junior minister, or it might be supporting a minister with their role, being a bag carrier, for example, for a minister. So you're going to want to get some kind of government job, ideally as a junior minister, because then you're going to be able to make statements in the House of Commons, and you're going to be able to demonstrate to the party leader that you are capable and credible when it comes to answering questions or asking questions in the House of Commons. So what you then do is you build up your reputation. You're hopefully then able to become a minister or a shadow minister, depending on whether you're in government or not. Build up a reputation for yourself, and then challenge for the party leadership. Now, as you could tell, this is going to be a very long process, and it's going to depend on which party you're in, how the challenge works. But in essence, let's take the Conservative Party, for example. What you need to do is to get enough of your colleagues within Parliament to support you. And in the Conservative Party, if there's a leadership election, it will be narrowed down by the parliamentary party to 2 candidates, and then those 2 candidates will go forward, and it will be down to the party membership. And so at the moment, in order to win a leadership contest in the Conservative Party, you're probably going to have to be quite right-wing, because the parliamentary party is pretty right-wing, but the membership are very right-wing. Remember, they voted for Liz Truss to be leader of the Conservative Party quite recently. And then the next step is, well, if your party is in government at that point in time, you become Prime Minister, right? So we've had plenty of Prime Ministers who have been unelected Prime Ministers. The Prime Minister of the day, for example, steps down or is forced to resign, and they are replaced by somebody else. So Gordon Brown, for example, took over from Tony Blair. Theresa May took over from David Cameron, etc. And we've had a whole string of Prime Ministers recently, haven't we? Boris Johnson took over from Theresa May when she resigned. He was replaced by Liz Truss. I was almost forgetting her name there. And then Liz Truss was replaced by Rishi Sunak. And all of those, at the point where they became Prime Minister, they were unelected Prime Ministers. But if you're not currently the governing party, then you would have to win a general election. And winning a general election entails winning over half of the 650 seats that are available within the country in order to have a majority. Because the Prime Minister is whoever can command the confidence of the House of Commons. In other words, what you need to be able to do to be Prime Minister, you need to be able to have your party behind you. They need to be loyal, and you need to have over half of the House of Commons. And if those things are in place, really, you're going to have a lot of power, because you're going to be able to get your party to vote through legislation, starting with the King's speech at the beginning of a parliamentary session. And then, of course, you're going to want to introduce legislation to get things done. So broadly speaking, that's how it works. If you want to be Prime Minister, it's a very long journey. The Prime Minister is whomever can command the confidence of the House of Commons, and in practice, that is the leader of the largest party in the House of Commons. But because of the nature of our political system, that's going to be either the Labour Party or the Conservative Party. And so if you're going to become Prime Minister, you've actually got quite a narrow path to tread. You're going to have to join one of those two parties, become known in your local area, be selected to stand for a seat, become the MP, have a ministerial career, challenge for the leadership, and then become the leader of the biggest party in Parliament, either by replacing a sitting Prime Minister or by winning a general election. And that is that. So thank you for joining me for this first episode of Politics 101. I hope you've learned something. If I haven't explained something very clearly, please put a question in the comments. And if you've got a suggestion for a future video, do let me know. Thank you very much, and goodbye for now.